Good Tuesday morning, and thank you for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Jason Hackett. Right now, polls are officially open across Minnesota, and voters are already heading out to cast their ballots in a number of key races. Audrey Russo is at a Minneapolis polling center this morning. She has a closer look at what you need to know before you vote.
That's right. I'm here at the historic machine shop in Minneapolis. If you're heading out to vote here this morning or at any other polling location across the metro, the first thing to know and to keep in mind is to leave the political garb at home. Minnesota actually has a law against wearing any kind of political clothing, campaign buttons, signage near a polling location. And speaking of polling locations, here's how to find yours. You can go to the Secretary of State website and put in your address. Then it'll tell you where to go vote. And if you're not registered to vote, well, you can do that same day today. You need a current valid ID like a driver's license or a tribal ID, and you bring that with you to your polling location. Or you can bring an expired ID along with a document showing your current name and your address, like a utility bill, a bank statement. And as you're waiting in line to vote, you want to make sure that you are careful about what you are doing with this, your phone, because there's technically no law saying you can't take pictures or videos inside a polling location, but the Secretary of State on their website discourages it because it can take up time, slow things down, and also compromise others' privacy. However, there is a law against showing a marked ballot to others. So that could include taking a direct picture of your ballot once it's filled out or taking a selfie with it. So just to stay safe, avoid taking any kind of picture with a completed ballot. Now, if you see something that you think needs to be reported, you can call 1-877-600-VOTE or text 651-217-3862. Both of those numbers can provide you information about what to do if you see something that you want to report. They also have more information just about the voting process in general. And one last thing, if you get in line at 8 o'clock at night and you're in line by that time, stay put, because even though the polls technically close at 8, if you are in line ready to cast your ballot, they have to let you vote. Back to you.
All right, good advice there, Audrey. Thank you. This morning, the candidates for the Twin Cities mayoral races are hoping to capture their final voters. In Minneapolis, Mayor Jacob Frey is seeking his third and final term. Omar Fateh, a state senator, is challenging. Other candidates include longtime Minister Duane Davis, Attorney Jas Hampton, and Brenda Short. And then in neighboring St. Paul, Melvin Carter is running to keep his seat as mayor. Challenging him at the polls this morning are Cully Herr, Yan Chen, Mike Hilborn, and Adam Dullinger. The winner of this race will only serve a 3-year term as the city switches to even-year elections. And Michelle Beck tells us more about some other big races you're going to want to know about this morning.
This will affect you if you live in most of Wright County or parts of Hennepin and Meeker counties. You're getting a new state senator. Same goes for those of you in Woodbury and the southern part of Maplewood. That's also known as Senate District 47. The winner of today's special election will fill the seat held by former DFL State Senator Nicole Mitchell, who resigned after being convicted of burglary. The race is between GOP candidate Dwight Dorough and DFL candidate Amanda Hemmingson Yeager. Meanwhile, a special election in Senate District 29 will fill the seat left by Republican Senator Bruce Anderson, who died in July. At stake with both races is the balance of power in the Senate. School referendums are also a big deal at the polls today. In St. Paul, for example, voters will decide whether to hike property taxes to provide more than $37 million to its public schools. Minnetonka and Hopkins will have referendum questions as well. Back to you.
Michelle, thank you. Now, both of those mayoral races in Minneapolis and St. Paul will use ranked choice voting. It's something that's been around for a while, but it's still confusing to many. Here's how it works.
Ranked choice voting is a method where voters rank several candidates for a single office. Voters in Minneapolis can rank up to 3 candidates, and in St. Paul, it can be up to 6. If a candidate gets 50% or more of the vote, they win. If no candidate reaches that threshold, the candidate with the fewest number of votes is eliminated, and voters who ranked the eliminated candidate as their first choice have their votes reassigned to their next highest ranked candidate. That process continues until someone gets that majority. You can vote for only one person, but the more candidates you rank, the more power your ballot has.
In the last few hours, we learned Dick Cheney, the influential and controversial Republican vice president to George W. Bush, has died. According to his family, Cheney passed away last night from complications of pneumonia and cardiac and vascular disease. He's best known as the chief architect of the Iraq War following the 9/11 terror attacks. Last year, he made headlines after he announced he was voting for former Vice President Kamala Harris over President Donald Trump. Cheney was 84 years old. Well, as Minnesotans head to the polls today, more high-stakes races are taking place across the U.S. Over in New York City, spotlights are on the mayoral race, while in Virginia and New Jersey, voters are choosing new governors. And in California, voters will decide whether to give Democratic lawmakers the power to redraw the state's congressional map. And what happens today could be a sign of things to come in next year's critical midterm elections. NBC's Alice Barr has the very latest from Washington.
Today, the first major elections of President Trump's second term, offering a snapshot of how Americans are leaning and a chance to shift the political landscape. Governors' races in New Jersey and Virginia featuring two Democratic women with national security backgrounds who served together in the U.S. House, now pitching themselves as a Democratic revival.
Are you ready to send a message to the rest of the country and the world?
In Virginia, former Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger taking on Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earle-Sears for the state's top job, both focused on the economy.
Making sure that you keep as much of your own money in your pocket as possible.
While in New Jersey, Democratic Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill framing the razor-tight race against Republican Jack Ciattarelli.
People want change.
As a referendum on President Trump.
On every single occasion, Jack has decided, I'm going to defend Trump.
The president has stayed off the campaign trail while holding election eve tele-rallies for New Jersey and Virginia candidates and making a surprise endorsement of former New York Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo, running as an independent against Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani, who's generated a lot of buzz in a high-stakes New York City mayor's race.
We need to make this a city that everyone can afford.
What experience do you have to be mayor?
While in California, a ballot measure seeks to redraw lines to add Democratic seats to Congress to counter President Trump's redistricting push in states like Texas. President Trump also threatened to cut off funding for New York City if Mamdani wins. And the president is, in many ways, the undercurrent to these elections, as the political world looks for clues to how much sway he and how voters feel about him may have on next year's all-important midterms. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
As we enter day 35 of the government shutdown, now tied as the longest in history, there's some good news this morning. The White House now saying it will partially fund SNAP benefits for millions of Americans. The Trump administration says it will use contingency funds to partially pay for those benefits this month. This comes after a federal judge ordered them to pay out benefits. But as officials say the money will only cover about half of SNAP, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent argues full benefits can be restored if Democrats vote to pass the GOP funding bill. Democrats, however, say Republicans are intentionally withholding food benefits.
Democrats are in the middle of a civil war, and they should just open the government.
All Republicans care about is the opinion of one man, the puppet master of the Republican Party, Donald J. Trump. They don't care about anything else. How else can you explain the fact that they are weaponizing hunger?
The Trump administration says it would need at least $4 billion in additional funds to provide full SNAP benefits. The impacts of the SNAP cuts are also trickling down to pet owners. One woman in North St. Paul stepping up and turning her little free library into a community care shelf for pet food.
Nobody should have to choose between feeding themselves or feeding their pets. So if I can help in a little way, I want to do that.
A Minneapolis animal shelter, The Bond Between, says it's seeing more people in need of pet food supplies and other services. The shelter's director says they used to see 100 new households a month. Now they're getting 200 people. And this month, Twin Cities Pet Evolution stores are collecting pet food, toys, and supplies to benefit local food pantries. Customers who donate will get 10% off their purchase that same day. If you'd like to help, we have more organizations and information at care11.com. Well, check it out, everyone. The snowball toss you see right here marking the start of Minneapolis's transformation into Winterapolis. It's a new winter tradition for downtown that begins the night after Thanksgiving and lasts well into February. The festival will be a combination of existing events like Dayton's Market, the Art Shanty Projects, and the Great Northern Festival, plus new attractions for your entire family. The kickoff is the night after Thanksgiving from 5 to 7:30. There will be live entertainment along Nicollet Mall and Crystal Court. At 6:05 is when skyscrapers, businesses, and streetlights will be ceremoniously lit along with a Christmas tree. Stick with us. More news and weather right after the break.